Hey guys, what's poppin'? Jacques Slade here, and by most accounts, I think we can all agree that Jordan Brand won this year. Out of all of the brands, they've been the most consistent with releases, both old and new, and they actually managed to stay relevant throughout the year, which is not something other brands can say. And there seems to always be a but, they weren't perfect. In fact, I would say they missed in a pretty big way with the release that many of us have been asking for, but we won't get into that right now. We'll get into that in just a second. As most of you guys know, the Air Jordan 1 was originally released way back in 1985 thanks to a brilliant designer named Peter Moore at Nike. Recently, you may have been hearing a lot of talk about this new shoe. Well, technically it's old shoe, the Nike Airship, which many see as a precursor to the Air Jordan 1, and we'll get into that in another video because that shoe by itself is fascinating. More importantly, in my mind, the Air Jordan 1 was the best silhouette of the year, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Notice I didn't say sneaker, I said silhouette. Now, my goal for this video isn't to convince you why this is the case, but just show you that they could have done one thing to really change the perception of the brand and make an almost perfect shoe in my mind. If we think back over this year, Jordan Brand crushed it when it came to collaborations. While there was definitely more than one, the main collaboration that obviously everybody is talking about is Travis Scott. Though it seems like it was a long time ago, the shoe actually launched back in May, and it was probably the most hyped collab sneaker of the year. As a fan of the Air Jordan 1, I usually stick to the classic colors, but this one definitely caught my eye, from the colors on the upper to the materials that they used. It really was a great shoe from the brand, and I'm not a huge fan of the reverse swoosh, and so I actually turned it around on one of my pairs, and it looks nice. Still, it was just a really great execution from the brand and Cactus Jack, and that's something that I don't think gets brought up quite enough. The execution of the Air Jordan 1. Because it is such an old silhouette, it allows for Jordan Brand to spend more time on the colors and materials that they use on the shoe as opposed to tweaking the design, which they also seem to insist on doing, which is why I'm doing this video in the first place. In some instances, it results in sneakers like the LA to Chicago colorway that fades and adds a new dynamic to the shoe, and in others, well, it just doesn't come off as cool. This year also brought us a new look at the Air Jordan 1 Low, but not just any Air Jordan 1 Low, a collab with Nike SB, which oddly enough was the buy-in that I think people really needed to make the Jordan 1 Low cooler in the eyes of the public. Some of you might know that the brand has a long history with skateboarding that started way back in 1985 with the Jordan 1. So to see these two brands so effortlessly, connect in this year and create colorways that people were actually into, well, that was actually pretty dope for me. That's not to say the more premium looking Jordan 1 lows from the past weren't nice, but they just didn't have the appeal of the SB collabs that we saw this year. That's not to say that the more premium looking Jordan 1 lows from the past weren't nice, but they just didn't have the appeal of the SB collabs that we saw this year. I mean, who would have thought? Now, one of the more interesting things that Jordan Brand did this year is the Jordan 1 Mid. Traditionally, the Air Jordan 1 Mid is the shoe that you see at the mall. It's the mall Jordan shoe. Before this year, I honestly can't think of any of my personal sneakerhead friends who rocked a pair of Jordan 1s. In fact, of all the sneakers that I own, I think I own 2 pairs of Jordan 1 mids, and one of those I actually bought this year because of the Fearless pack. But according to some people I know at Jordan Brand, retailers were actually asking for more Jordan 1 mids, which pushed the brand to highlight their silhouette in 2019, and we got those collabs. The most obvious way was with the Fearless pack. If you haven't noticed it, so brands, what they like to do is create a hyped version of a silhouette first, and then they push it out in typical colors and versions for the broader public to get into. This seems to be how the brand is approaching it and getting people hyped for that shoe. The Fearless pack is almost like the gateway to get more people into the shoe so that they will buy more down the line. And speaking of the Fearless pack, the one shoe that I was looking forward to seeing is the Air Jordan 1 Zoom Fearless. I have no problem admitting that I really like the Air Jordan 1, but it is not the most comfortable shoe in the world. In fact, in comparison to sneakers of today, the Jordan 1 can be considered downright uncomfortable, which is why I was so excited about the addition of Zoom. Now, for you older heads out there, you already know that Jordan Brand tried to create a modern performance version of the Jordan 1 called the Alpha, but people just didn't get into it at the time, and they changed the way the shoe looked, which you would think they would stop doing, but they don't. And again, performance and Jordan 1, they just don't match up. However, with the Air Jordan 1 High Zoom, as it's officially called, it's an interesting shoe. I think Jordan Brand is starting to get a better sense of what we as the public want, and this shoe is a look into that future world, I hope. The shoe features a full-length zoom unit, and if you've actually played in the KD12, it features that same tech on the strobo board. Now, that should fix the comfort issues with the Air Jordan 1, and I can vouch it feels fantastic. You literally feel it as soon as you put on the shoe. And if Jordan Brand would have done just that, it may have been the best shoe the brand created this year. But you know, like I know, that Jordan Brand doesn't get down like that. They had to make changes to the shoe to separate it from the OG. Now, the most obvious of these changes is the upper. Instead of using a traditional Chicago or Royal or band colorway of the shoe, Jordan Brand opted for an iridescent inspired look that changes color based on how the light hits the shoe. And to be honest, that even isn't the big issue. The issue is the materials on the upper. It's some sort of like synthetic that feels like vinyl or plastic and really doesn't give very much. With leather, the upper can sometimes feel stiff, but this material is just hard and almost coarse. In a sense, the comfort you gain by the Zoom unit is actually lost because the rest of the shoe's upper is now more uncomfortable. But it doesn't even stop there. The outsole is now icy blue or a clear bottom to help highlight the Zoom unit with that like color changing linear graphic on the bottom with a bunch of Z's for Zoom. With the OG pairs, the standard I think everyone is actually gonna hold this shoe to, the outsole is usually a solid color. Look, don't get me wrong, I don't mind an icy outsole on a shoe, but putting it on an Air Jordan 1 just feels a bit off to me. It almost makes it too modern. And I also understand that there needs to be something to differentiate this model from the actual OG. For me, it would have been enough to flip the tag on the tongue and to include that zoom tag they have there on the lateral side like they did, but the outsole, just in my opinion, pushes things outside that general aesthetic of a Jordan 1. Speaking of the tongue, they also took out the padding and streamlined it quite a bit. It's filled with holes to help the shoe breathe, I guess. It looks sort of like mesh, but it's not made of mesh. It's made of that same hard material. Yeah, it just makes the shoe uncomfortable to wear, in my opinion, and I feel like it's going to crease a lot. Now, the last updates that they made include the C8082-AZ1 on the lateral heel and overall makeup of the shoe. Because it is of one material that is cut slightly different from the OGs, you miss the I want to say it's like the layered effect of the different colors on the shoe. Even with like a monotone Jordan 1, but they use a thicker cut of leather, you feel like the layers of the design, they add some depth, they add shadows. Those are completely gone with this update to the shoe. Whether that is something we will see moving forward is still up in the air, but for now, it does feel a bit disappointing. Despite all of these changes, I don't think all is lost with the AJ1 Zoom. There is a big opportunity to create a new silhouette that maintains the nostalgia of the OG model, but keeps us nice and comfortable with the updated use of the Zoom unit. In my mind, that would make the perfect Air Jordan 1. Jordan could literally release all of the exact same colorways of the Air Jordan 1s that they've been creating the last 5 to 10 years, and I believe we would all double up to get new pairs. The Zoom strobo board is insanely comfortable, and I think people would flip out if they could get these OG colors in a more comfortable silhouette. Instead, Jordan Brand is going to release a bunch of unwanted colorways in the shoe, and my worry is that because they may not sell as well, it is going to give the impression that people don't like the shoe. And that's the part that sucks. The Air Jordan 1 is a beloved sneaker with one real flaw in my eyes. It was uncomfortable after wearing it for a while. With the AJ1 Zoom, they found that solution, but instead, it seems that in the process of creating a more comfortable version of the shoe, they decided to make it harder for people to love the look of the shoe by dropping it in colors that I just don't think anyone wants, and using a strange material on the upper that is hard and stiff, and at the end of the day, creating an experience that is worse than it was before. Does that mean they will always do that? I don't know, but as a guy that is into sneakers, it really makes it frustrating when you are so close to having the perfect Jordan 1 only to have it taken away from you like right at the finish line. So those are my thoughts. Because these aren't selling through for the most part, I recommend you at least go try a pair on to see what I mean. The AJ1 Zoom is a very comfortable shoe, but that upper, the material, it just doesn't work for me. And I wish they would have just kept it like the OGs and just added the Zoom strobo board to make literally the perfect Jordan 1. Anyway, I'm Jacques Slade, Hope you guys enjoy. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
And I started doing some busy work. Basically, I positioned myself there as a non-verbal. I could see him reaching in his duffel bag to get a pen, and I saw him sign both of them in the corner of my eye. When he signed the shoe, he grabbed them like this, and he said, "Hey, little man," and gave them to me like that. Gary Vitti was very thorough, and he